I still remember that day. The day my mother-in-law pointed at my torn shoes and laughed. Loudly. She didn't look at my face, just at my shoes. And in that moment, I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my entire life. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into thin air. But I stood there, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. My husband looked away. He didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. And that silence hurt more than her laughter ever could. I remember thinking, is this what my life has become? Is this what love looks like? The dining room was filled with people, Daniel's entire family, aunts, uncles, cousins, all dressed in expensive clothes, all looking at me, some with pity, some with amusement, and Mrs. Margaret Thornton, my mother-in-law, standing at the head of the table, still pointing at my feet. "Those shoes," she said again, louder this time. "Did you find them in a charity bin, Emma, or are you making some kind of statement?" A few people chuckled, not loud enough to be obvious, but loud enough for me to hear. My cheeks burned. My hands trembled. I wanted to defend myself, to say something, anything, but my voice was trapped somewhere deep inside my throat. Daniel finally spoke. "Mom, that's enough." But his voice was weak, barely above a whisper. Mrs. Thornton waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, Daniel. I'm just saying if she's going to be part of this family, she needs to present herself properly. We have standards." Standards. That word. I had heard it so many times since marrying into this family. Standards. As if I was some kind of product that didn't meet quality control. I looked down at my shoes. Yes, they were old. Yes, they were worn, but they were clean. I had polished them that morning. I had tried my best, but my best was never enough for her. What Mrs. Thornton didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my story was far from over. There was a truth buried deep inside my past, a truth I had only recently discovered myself, a truth that would soon walk through that very door, and when it did, everything would change, because the woman they saw standing before them in torn shoes wasn't who they thought she was. I wasn't just Emma Carter, the poor girl from the wrong side of town. I was someone else entirely, and very soon they would all find out. My name is Emma Carter, or at least that's what I've been called my whole life. I grew up in a small, run-down neighborhood on the outskirts of Boston. My childhood was simple. We didn't have much. My mother, Linda Carter, worked as a seamstress. She spent her days bent over a sewing machine, stitching clothes for neighbors who could barely afford to pay her. But she never complained. She would smile and say, "As long as we have each other, we have everything." Our apartment was tiny. One bedroom that we shared, a kitchen with a stove that only worked on 2 burners, a bathroom with tiles that were cracked and stained. But it was home, and my mother made it feel safe. I never knew my father. Not his name, not his face, nothing. Whenever I asked, my mother's eyes would fill with tears. She would look away and say, "Some things are better left in the past, sweetheart." So I stopped asking. I learned to live with the emptiness, the unanswered questions. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need a father, that my mother's love was enough. And for a long time, it was. But deep down, there was always a hollow space inside me. A space that wondered, who was he? Why did he leave? Did he ever think about me? I grew up wearing hand-me-down clothes, shoes that were 2 sizes too big, stuffed with newspapers so they would fit. I never had birthday parties, never went on vacations, but I studied hard because I knew education was my only way out. My teachers noticed. They encouraged me. One of them helped me apply for scholarships, and I got one, a full scholarship to Boston University. My mother cried when I got the acceptance letter. She held me tight and whispered, "You're going to have a better life than I did, I promise." College was hard, not academically, but emotionally. I was surrounded by people who had everything, designer bags, new laptops, cars, and I had nothing. I worked 3 part-time jobs to support myself. Waitressing, tutoring, cleaning dorm rooms. I barely slept, but I graduated with honors, and I got a job as a junior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and it was mine. That's where I met Daniel Thornton. Daniel worked in the marketing department on the 5th floor. I was on the 3rd. We would see each other at the coffee machine every morning. He always smiled, a genuine smile, not the kind people give you out of politeness, but the kind that reaches your eyes. We started talking, small talk at first, about work, about the weather, about the terrible coffee in the break room, then deeper conversations, about dreams, about life, about what we wanted for our futures. Daniel was different from anyone I had ever met. He came from money, that much was obvious, but he never flaunted it. He never made me feel less than. He just liked me, for me. When he asked me out, I said yes. We dated for a year, a beautiful, simple year. He took me to small cafes, we walked through parks, we watched old movies at cheap theaters. He never took me to fancy restaurants because he knew I would feel uncomfortable, and I loved him for that. When he proposed, I cried. Happy tears. I thought, finally, I'm going to have a family, a real family. But I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know that his mother, Mrs. Margaret Thornton, had already decided who I was before she even met me. The first time I met Daniel's family was 3 months before our wedding. He had been nervous all week. They can be intense, he warned me, but don't worry, they'll love you. I wanted to believe him, but when we pulled up to the Thornton estate, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a house, it was a mansion. Stone walls, massive iron gates, gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. I looked down at my dress, a simple blue sundress I had bought on sale. My shoes were clean, but old. I suddenly felt completely out of place. Daniel squeezed my hand. "You look beautiful," he said, but I could see the worry in his eyes. We walked inside. The interior was even more intimidating than the exterior. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, paintings that looked like they belonged in a museum. And standing in the foyer was Mrs. Margaret Thornton. She was tall, elegant. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her dress probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She looked at me, up and down, slowly, deliberately. Her expression didn't change, but I could see it in her eyes. Disappointment. "So," she said, her voice cold and measured, "this is Emma. Not nice to meet you, not welcome, just this is Emma." As if I was an object, a specimen to be examined. Daniel stepped forward. "Mom, this is my fiancée, Emma Carter." She extended her hand. I reached out to shake it, but she barely touched my fingers, a half-second grip. Then she pulled away and turned to Daniel. "We'll have dinner in the dining room. Your father is waiting." That was it. No warmth, no welcome, just business. Dinner was torture. The dining table was enormous. Daniel's father, Richard Thornton, sat at the head. He was a man of few words. He nodded at me once when we were introduced, then said nothing for the rest of the evening. Mrs. Thornton asked me questions, but they weren't questions, they were interrogations. "So, Emma, what do your parents do?" "My mother is a seamstress. My father, I never knew him." Her eyebrows raised slightly. "I see. And where did you go to school?" "Boston University. I had a scholarship." "A scholarship? How resourceful." The way she said resourceful made it sound like an insult. "And what do you do now?" "I'm an accountant. Junior level, but I'm working my way up." "Junior level." She took a sip of wine. "Daniel, of course, is set to take over his father's firm in a few years. He'll be managing assets worth millions." She looked at me. "I assume you understand the kind of life he's accustomed to?" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Good, because this family has certain expectations, standards, if you will." There it was again. Standards. I felt Daniel tense beside me, but he said nothing. After dinner, as we were leaving, Mrs. Thornton pulled Daniel aside. I pretended to admire a painting in the hallway, but I could hear every word. Daniel, are you absolutely certain about this? Yes, Mom, I love her. Love is a luxury, Daniel. Marriage is a partnership, a strategic alliance. This girl, she's not from our world. She doesn't understand our lifestyle, our responsibilities. She's intelligent, hardworking, kind. What else matters? Everything else matters. Breeding, background, connections. She has none of that. I don't care. You should, because when you marry her, you're not just marrying her, you're bringing her into this family, and I won't have our reputation tarnished by— Daniel, stop. His voice was firmer now. Mrs. Thornton sighed. Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. I pretended I hadn't heard, but I had. Every single word, and a small part of me wondered, am I making a mistake? Despite Mrs. Thornton's objections, Daniel and I got married. It was a small ceremony, just a handful of friends, my mother, and Daniel's immediate family, who attended out of obligation, not joy. Mrs. Thornton wore black, to a wedding, as if she was in mourning. I tried not to let it bother me. I focused on Daniel, on the vows we exchanged, on the promise of our future together. We moved into a modest apartment downtown. Daniel wanted to stay close to his family. I would have preferred more distance, but I didn't argue. I wanted to make him happy. Life was good for the first few months. We were building something together. But slowly, things began to shift. Mrs. Thornton started visiting. Often, always unannounced. She would walk in, look around, and make comments. This couch is quaint. You're still using these dishes? Daniel, I can send over some of our old china. Emma, dear, have you considered updating your wardrobe? You're a Thornton now. You represent this family. Every visit chipped away at my confidence. Every comment made me feel smaller. And Daniel? He said nothing. He would just smile awkwardly and try to change the subject. I felt invisible, like I was slowly disappearing. One evening, I broke down. I cried in our bedroom, clutching my pillow. Daniel found me. Emma, what's wrong? Your mother hates me. She doesn't hate you. She's just traditional, set in her ways. She mocks me, Daniel. She belittles everything I do, and you never defend me. He looked away. I'll talk to her. But he never did. And then, 3 months ago, something happened. Something that changed everything. My mother got sick. Pneumonia. She was hospitalized. I spent every night at her bedside. One evening, when she was drifting in and out of consciousness, she grabbed my hand. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. Her voice was weak. Mom, don't strain yourself. You need to rest. No, I need to say this. I should have told you years ago. She took a shaky breath. Your father, I lied to you. My heart stopped. What? He didn't abandon us. I left him. Why? Tears rolled down her cheeks. Because I was young and stupid. He was wealthy, powerful, and I was just a girl from nowhere. His family didn't approve. They tried to pay me to leave, and I was scared. I thought you'd have a better life without him, without all that pressure. I couldn't breathe. Who is he? She reached into the drawer beside her bed, pulled out an old, faded envelope. His name is Jonathan Pierce. He's a CEO, a very successful man. I never told him about you. He doesn't know you exist. Jonathan Pierce. I knew that name. Everyone did. He was one of the wealthiest men in Boston, owner of Pierce Industries, a name that appeared in newspapers and magazines. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying, Emma, and you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know where you come from. She pressed the envelope into my hand. This is his contact information. If you ever want to reach out, it's your choice. She passed away 2 weeks later. and I was left with a decision. Do I reach out to a man who doesn't know I exist, a man who might reject me just like the Thorntons have? Or do I keep living in the shadows, pretending I'm nothing? I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't tell anyone. I just carried that envelope with me everywhere, waiting for the right moment. And then came Daniel's birthday, the day everything exploded. Mrs. Thornton insisted on hosting a family dinner at the estate for Daniel's birthday. I didn't want to go. Every visit to that house felt like walking into a battlefield. But Daniel begged me, "Please, Emma, it's just one evening for me." So I agreed. I wore my best dress, navy blue, simple but elegant. I did my hair, applied light makeup, and then I looked down at my shoes. I only had one pair that wasn't completely worn out, black flats, but the sole was coming apart at the front. I had tried to glue it back together that morning, but the glue hadn't held properly. I'd thought about buying new shoes, but money was tight. My mother's hospital bills had drained my savings, and I hadn't wanted to ask Daniel for money. I didn't want to seem like I was using him, so I wore the shoes and hoped no one would notice. When we arrived at the estate, the house was already full. Daniel's aunts, uncles, cousins, all dressed immaculately, all smiling their fake smiles. Mrs. Thornton greeted us at the door. She kissed Daniel on the cheek, then looked at me. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe and stopped at my feet. I saw her lips twitch, but she said nothing, not yet. Dinner was set up in the grand dining room. Long table, crystal glasses, silver cutlery. Everyone took their seats. I sat beside Daniel, across from Mrs. Thornton. The conversation flowed around me. Business, politics, gossip about people I didn't know. I stayed quiet, just smiled politely when someone looked my way. And then, halfway through the meal, it happened. I reached down to adjust my shoe under the table. The sole had come completely loose. I tried to discreetly tuck it back, but Mrs. Thornton noticed. "Emma, dear, is something wrong with your shoe?" The table went quiet. All eyes turned to me. "Oh, no, it's fine. Just a little loose." She smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Why don't you show us?" My heart sank. "Mrs. Thornton, it's really not—" "We insist." She stood up and walked over to my side of the table. "Come on, dear. Let's have a look." I had no choice. I slipped off my shoe and placed it on the table. The sole was barely hanging on. The interior lining was visible. It looked worse than I thought. Mrs. Thornton picked it up between two fingers, as if it was contaminated. "My goodness," she said loudly. "Did you find this in a dumpster, Emma?" A few people chuckled. "Or perhaps you're making some kind of poverty statement. Is this some new trend I'm unaware of?" The laughter grew. My face burned. I looked at Daniel. He was staring at his plate. "Daniel," Mrs. Thornton continued, "this is exactly what I've been talking about. This is who you married, someone who can't even afford a decent pair of shoes." I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up. My hands were shaking. My voice cracked. "I'm sorry my shoes aren't up to your standards, Mrs. Thornton. I'm sorry I spent all my money on my mother's hospital bills instead of designer clothes. I'm sorry I'm not rich like you." The room was dead silent. Mrs. Thornton's face turned cold. "Don't you dare raise your voice at me in my own home." "Then don't humiliate me in front of everyone." "Humiliate you? I'm simply pointing out reality. You don't belong here, Emma. You never did. And deep down, I think you know that." Tears filled my eyes. I grabbed my shoe and turned to leave. But Daniel finally spoke. "Emma, wait." I stopped. "Don't go, please." I looked at him, at the man I had married, the man who had promised to love and protect me, and I realized something. He was never going to stand up for me. Not really. He was too afraid of his mother, too comfortable in this world of wealth and status. And I was tired of being small, tired of being invisible, tired of apologizing for existing. So I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and I called the number from the envelope, the number I had been carrying for weeks. It rang twice, then a deep, calm voice answered. Jonathan Pierce speaking? I took a breath. Mr. Pierce, my name is Emma Carter. I'm Linda Carter's daughter, and I think I'm your daughter too. There was a long pause. Where are you? I gave him the address. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. I looked at Mrs. Thornton, at Daniel, at everyone in that room. You wanted to know who I am? I said quietly. You're about to find out. The 20 minutes that followed felt like an eternity. No one spoke. Mrs. Thornton stood frozen, her face a mixture of confusion and fury. Daniel looked at me like I had lost my mind. Emma, what are you talking about? Who did you just call? I didn't answer. I just stood there, clutching my phone, my torn shoe still in my other hand. Some of the guests started whispering. Mrs. Thornton regained her composure. This is absurd, she said. You're making a scene, Emma. I think it's best if you leave. I'm not going anywhere. Excuse me? You wanted to humiliate me. Fine, but now you're going to see exactly who you've been mocking. Her eyes narrowed. You're being ridiculous. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the entire house. Everyone turned toward the foyer. Mrs. Thornton's butler, Charles, walked to the door and opened it. And there he stood, Jonathan Pierce. I had seen his picture in magazines, but in person, he was more imposing. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. His hair was salt and pepper, neatly combed. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and when they landed on me, they softened. Charles looked confused. Sir, may I help you? I'm here to see Emma Carter. Mrs. Thornton stepped forward. I'm sorry, but this is a private family gathering. You can't just... Jonathan's gaze shifted to her, and the look he gave her was enough to make her stop mid-sentence. I received a call from a young woman claiming to be my daughter. Now, where is she? I stepped forward. I'm here. He walked toward me, slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. When he reached me, he stopped. For a long moment, he just looked at me, studying my face. Then he whispered, You have her eyes. Linda's eyes. My throat tightened. You remember her? I never forgot her. He turned to address the room. I apologize for the intrusion, but if this young woman is who I think she is, then this concerns me deeply. Mrs. Thornton found her voice again. This is preposterous. She's clearly making this up for attention. Jonathan's expression hardened. And you are who? Margaret Thornton. This is my home, and Emma is my son's wife. I see. He looked at Daniel. You must be the husband. Daniel nodded, clearly intimidated. Yes, sir. Jonathan turned back to me. Emma, you said your mother was Linda Carter. Yes. And she recently passed away? I nodded, tears forming. 2 weeks ago. His jaw tightened. I'm sorry, I didn't know. She never told you about me. No. He paused. But I always wondered. After she left, I tried to find her. I hired investigators, but she had disappeared completely. I thought she had moved on, that she wanted nothing to do with me. She left because your family paid her to. His face went pale. What? Your family. They offered her money to leave, to disappear. She was scared. She thought I'd have a better life without you. Jonathan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was pain there. Deep, raw pain. My father, he said quietly. It was my father. He did that with every woman I dated who wasn't from our circle. He looked at me. I'm so sorry. If I had known, it's not your fault. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. I need to be sure. I hope you understand. Of course. He made a call. Dr. Stevens, it's Jonathan Pierce. I need an urgent DNA test. Yes, I'll send a car to bring you to this address immediately. Thank you. He hung up and looked at Mrs. Thornton. We'll have confirmation within the hour. If Emma is my daughter, then she's not just some poor girl you can mock. She's the heir to Pierce Industries, worth approximately $4 billion. The room erupted in whispers. Mrs. Thornton's face went white. Daniel looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Jonathan continued, "And if I find out that she's been mistreated in any way, there will be consequences." Mrs. Thornton tried to speak. "Mr. Pierce, we had no idea. If you had known she was wealthy, you would have treated her with respect." He shook his head. "That says everything I need to know about you." He turned to me. "Emma, would you like to wait somewhere more comfortable? We don't need to stay here." I looked at Daniel. He was staring at me with wide eyes. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked truly awake. "Daniel," I said softly, "did you know about your mother's treatment of me?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally whispered, "Yes." "And you said nothing?" I didn't know what to do. I was trying to keep the peace." "You were trying to keep your inheritance," Jonathan said coldly. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? You didn't want to upset Mommy and Daddy." Daniel's face flushed. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Jonathan looked at me. "Emma, you deserve better than this." And in that moment, I realized he was right. I did deserve better. Better than a husband who couldn't stand up for me. Better than a family who valued status over substance. Better than a life spent apologizing for existing. Dr. Stevens arrived 30 minutes later with a DNA testing kit. The process was quick, a simple cheek swab from both Jonathan and me. Then we waited. The doctor had a portable lab device in his car. He said results would take about 20 minutes. Those were the longest 20 minutes of my life. Jonathan and I sat in the Thorntons' library, away from the others. He asked me about my life, about my mother, about growing up. I told him everything. The tiny apartment, the hand-me-down clothes, working multiple jobs through college, meeting Daniel. He listened intently, his expression growing darker with each story. "You shouldn't have had to struggle like that," he said quietly. "If I had known." "You couldn't have known. My mother made sure of that." "I understand why she did it, but it doesn't make it right." He looked at me. "I missed everything. Your first words, your first day of school, birthdays, graduations. It's not too late." He smiled sadly. "Isn't it? You're a grown woman now. You don't need a father." "Everyone needs family," I said. "I've never had a father, and you've never had a daughter. Maybe we can figure it out together." Before he could respond, Dr. Stevens entered the library. He was holding a tablet. "Mr. Pierce, I have the results." Jonathan stood up. I could see his hands shaking slightly. "And?" Dr. Stevens looked at me, then back at Jonathan. "Congratulations, Mr. Pierce. She's your daughter. 99.9% match." The room spun. I knew it was true. Deep down I had known, but hearing it confirmed, Jonathan's eyes filled with tears. He walked over to me and knelt down in front of my chair. "Emma," he whispered, "my daughter." He reached out, hesitant, and I took his hand. And then I did something I hadn't done since I was a little girl. I cried. Really cried. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief, of finally belonging somewhere. Jonathan pulled me into a hug, and for the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to be protected, to be valued, to be someone's daughter. After a few moments, we pulled apart. Jonathan stood up, wiping his eyes. "I think it's time we addressed the situation with the Thorntons." We walked back into the dining room. Everyone was still there, waiting. When they saw us, the room went silent. Jonathan spoke first. "The DNA test confirms it. Emma is my daughter." Mrs. Thornton's face went from white to gray. Daniel just stared. "Which means," Jonathan continued, "that you've all been treating the heiress to Pierce Industries like she was beneath you." One of Daniel's aunts laughed nervously. "Well, if we had known—" "That's the problem," Jonathan cut her off. "You only care now because you know she's wealthy. Where was this respect when you thought she was just a poor girl?" No one answered. Jonathan turned to Mrs. Thornton. "You, in particular, have made my daughter's life miserable. You've mocked her, belittled her, made her feel worthless." Mrs. Thornton tried to speak. Mr. Pierce, please understand, we were only trying to what? Protect your son by destroying your wife's self-esteem? He looked at Daniel. And you stood by and watched. You let your mother treat Emma like garbage. What kind of husband does that? Daniel's voice was small. I was trying to keep everyone happy. You can't keep everyone happy, Jonathan said. You have to choose, and you chose your mother over your wife. I had been quiet through all of this, but now I needed to speak. Daniel, I said, stepping forward, I loved you. I really did. But love isn't supposed to make you feel small. It's supposed to make you feel whole. His eyes pleaded with me. Emma, please, I'll change. I'll stand up to my mother, I promise. You've had months to stand up to her. You never did. Because I was scared. Of what? Losing your inheritance? Disappointing your mother? I shook my head. I was scared too, Daniel, every single day. Scared I wasn't good enough. Scared I didn't belong. Scared that one day you'd realize your mother was right about me. She's not right about you. I know that now, I looked him in the eye, but you don't. You still see me the way she does, as someone beneath you, someone you have to defend, someone who's lucky to be here. That's not true. Then why didn't you ever defend me? Why did you let her mock me, mock my mother, mock my shoes? He had no answer. I turned to Mrs. Thornton. You wanted to know if I had standards, if I was good enough for your family. I smiled. But the real question is, are you good enough for mine? Her mouth opened. No words came out. Jonathan placed a hand on my shoulder. Emma, we should go. You don't belong in this house. I nodded. But before I left, I slipped off my torn shoes, both of them, and I placed them on the dining table, right in front of Mrs. Thornton. Keep them, I said. A reminder that money doesn't buy class, and cruelty doesn't make you powerful. It just makes you small. And then I walked out, barefoot, with my head held high, and my father beside me. The weeks that followed were surreal. Jonathan insisted I move into his estate. It was even bigger than the Thornton house, but it felt different, warmer. He showed me to my room, a massive space with a balcony overlooking the gardens. This was going to be the nursery, he said quietly, when Linda was pregnant. I didn't know, of course, but I had this room prepared, just in case we ever had a child. I looked around. He had kept it all these years, waiting. You can redecorate however you want, he added quickly. I know it's probably not your style. It's perfect. Over the next few days, Jonathan introduced me to his world, his company, his colleagues, his life. Everyone was curious about the daughter who had suddenly appeared, but Jonathan made it clear. I was to be treated with respect, not because of my inheritance, but because I was his daughter. He enrolled me in etiquette classes, not because I needed to change, but because, as he said, the world of wealth has its own language. I want you to be able to navigate it without feeling lost. He bought me new clothes, not to replace who I was, but to give me options. You can wear jeans every day if you want, he said, but I want you to have choices. And he bought me shoes, dozens of them, all kinds, heels, flats, boots, sneakers. When I saw them, I cried. You never have to feel ashamed again, he said. But the most important thing he did was listen. Every night we'd have dinner together, just the two of us, and we'd talk about everything, about my mother, about his regrets, about what we both wanted for the future. I can't change the past, he said. One evening, I can't give you back those years, but I can promise you something, Emma. You will never feel alone again. You will never be dismissed or belittled, not while I'm alive. I believed him because, unlike Daniel, Jonathan didn't just make promises, he kept them. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the incident at the Thorntons, I received a call from Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Emma. His voice was thick with emotion. Please, I need to see you. Daniel, I don't think... Please, just once, let me explain. I looked at Jonathan, who was reading nearby. He raised an eyebrow. It's Daniel, I whispered. Do you want to see him? I thought about it. Did I? Part of me wanted to just close that chapter completely, but another part needed closure. Yes, but somewhere public. Jonathan nodded. I'll have my driver take you, and I'll have security nearby, just in case. You don't have to do that. Emma, you're my daughter. I'm going to protect you whether you like it or not. I met Daniel at a small cafe downtown. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. He looked different, tired, thinner. His eyes lit up when he saw me, but there was sadness there too. Emma, thank you for coming. I sat down across from him. What did you want to say? He took a deep breath. I'm sorry for everything, for not defending you, for letting my mother treat you that way, for being a coward. I said nothing. He continued. I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping the peace, not making waves, but I realize now I was just scared of losing my family's approval, scared of being cut off, scared of choosing. You did choose, Daniel. You chose them. I know, and I hate myself for it. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I love you, Emma. I really do. Love isn't just a feeling, Daniel. It's a choice. It's action. And when it mattered most, you chose silence. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. Could I? Maybe someday. But not now. I don't hate you, I said softly. But I can't be with someone who won't stand beside me, who won't fight for me. What if I change? What if I prove to you? You shouldn't have to prove it, Daniel. It should be instinct. When someone you love is being hurt, you protect them. You don't need to think about it. He nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face. I understand. I stood up. I hope you find happiness, Daniel. I really do. But it won't be with me. I turned to leave, but then I stopped and looked back. And, Daniel, stand up to your mother. Not for me, but for yourself. Because as long as you're living her life, you'll never have your own. I walked out of that cafe, and I didn't look back. Because I finally understood something. I didn't need Daniel to complete me. I didn't need the Thorntons to validate me. I was enough. I had always been enough. A few months later, Jonathan made an announcement. He was stepping down as CEO of Pierce Industries, and he was naming me as his successor. The board was shocked. She has no experience running a company, one of them argued. Jonathan smiled. She has something better. She has resilience. She's built herself from nothing. She knows what it's like to struggle, and that perspective will make her a better leader than any MBA ever could. He turned to me. But only if you want it, Emma. I won't force you into anything. I thought about it. Did I want to run a billion-dollar company? A year ago, I would have said no. I would have been too intimidated, too scared. But now I knew who I was and what I was capable of. Yes, I said. I want it. The transition wasn't easy. There were people who doubted me, who whispered that I was only there because of my last name. But I proved them wrong. I worked harder than anyone else. I learned everything I could. And slowly, I earned their respect. Not because I was Jonathan Pierce's daughter, but because I was good at what I did. One day, about a year after everything had happened, I ran into Mrs. Thornton. It was at a charity gala. She was standing near the bar, talking to a group of women. When she saw me, she went pale. I could have walked away, could have ignored her, but instead I walked over. Mrs. Thornton? Emma, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm on the board of this charity now. I helped organize this event. She forced a smile. How lovely. There was an awkward silence. Then she said quietly, I heard about your success. You've done very well for yourself. Yes, I have. I want you to know, I'm sorry for how I treated you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized something. She wasn't this big, intimidating figure anymore. She was just a woman who had defined herself by status and money, and who was now seeing that none of it really mattered. Are you sorry you treated me badly, or are you sorry you didn't know who I was? She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I smiled. I forgive you, Mrs. Thornton, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. And I walked away for the last time. That night, I stood on the balcony of my room, looking out at the gardens below, the stars above, and I thought about everything that had happened, about the girl I used to be, the girl who wore torn shoes and felt ashamed, the girl who apologized for existing. And I realized something important. That girl was still a part of me. She always would be. But she wasn't all of me anymore. Because I had learned something through all of this. Something I wish I had known sooner. Your worth is not determined by what you have. It's determined by who you are. Mrs. Thornton had everything. Money, status, a beautiful home. But she had no kindness, no empathy, no real love. My mother had nothing, but she had given me everything that mattered. Love, strength, dignity. Jonathan found me on the balcony. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Just thinking." He stood beside me. About how different my life is now. "Do you miss it? Your old life?" I thought about it. I miss my mother every day, and I miss the simplicity. But no, I don't miss the struggle. I don't miss feeling small. He nodded. "You know, Emma, I've been thinking too, about my father, about what he did to your mother, to us. He thought he was protecting you. Maybe, but he was wrong. He stole years from us, years we'll never get back." He looked at me. "I've learned something from you." "From me?" "Yes. You've taught me that strength isn't about power or money. It's about character. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. You already knew that." Maybe, but I had forgotten. I had spent so long in this world of wealth and status that I'd lost sight of what really matters. We stood in silence for a moment. Then I said, "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you think my mother ever regretted leaving you?" He thought about it. "I think she did what she thought was best for you, and that takes a special kind of love, a selfless love." I just wish she had told me sooner. So do I, but maybe the timing was right. If you had known earlier, maybe you wouldn't have become the woman you are today. Maybe you needed those struggles to build your strength. I had never thought about it that way. Maybe he was right. Maybe everything had happened exactly as it was supposed to. "Emma," Jonathan said, turning to face me, "I want you to promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Not because of where you came from, not because of what you have or don't have. Your value doesn't change based on someone else's opinion." "I promise. And promise me you'll use your position for good. You have power now. Use it to help people who are where you used to be, people who are struggling, people who feel invisible." "I will." He hugged me. "I'm so proud of you, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there before, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." In the months and years that followed, I kept that promise. I created scholarship programs for underprivileged students. I donated to shelters and food banks. I hired people who'd been overlooked by others, people who didn't have fancy degrees or perfect resumes, but who had heart and determination. And I learned something important. True wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in impact, in the lives you touch, in the people you help, in the kindness you show. Mrs. Thornton had taught me an important lesson, even if she hadn't meant to. She had taught me what not to become. She had shown me that money without compassion is meaningless, that status without substance is empty, that you can have everything and still have nothing. And Daniel had taught me something too. He had taught me that love requires courage, that it's not enough to feel something. You have to act on it. You have to stand up. You have to choose every single day. But the most important lesson came from my mother and from Jonathan. They taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about being there when it matters. It's about loving someone even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, even when the world tells you not to. My mother loved me enough to let go. Jonathan loved me enough to embrace me when I returned, and I learned to love myself enough to walk away from people who didn't value me. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Not what others think of you, but what you think of yourself. Not what you have, but who you are. Not where you came from, but where you're going. I stand here today not as the poor girl with torn shoes, and not as the heiress to a fortune, but as Emma, a woman who knows her worth, a woman who won't apologize for existing, a woman who understands that true value comes from within. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Never let anyone make you feel small. Never let anyone tell you that you're not enough. Because you are enough. You have always been enough, and you always will be. Your circumstances don't define you. Your past doesn't define you. What others think of you doesn't define you. You define you. So stand tall. Wear your torn shoes with pride if you have to, because it's not about what's on your feet. It's about where those feet will take you. And never forget, the people who mock you when you have nothing are the same people who will want something from you when you have everything. But the people who love you when you have nothing, those are the people worth keeping. My mother-in-law mocked my poverty until my real father arrived. But the truth is, I didn't need him to arrive to prove my worth. I already had worth. I just needed to see it for myself. And now, I do.
So what about you? Have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever been made to feel like you weren't enough? Have you ever been judged for where you came from instead of who you are? If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength, if it made you feel less alone, then do me a favor. Hit that like button right now, because every like tells me that these stories matter, that your story matters. And subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to keep sharing stories of resilience, of courage, of people who refuse to be defined by their circumstances. Stories that remind us all that we're stronger than we think. And drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Have you ever faced someone like Mrs. Thornton? Have you ever had to walk away from people who didn't value you? Or have you found your own Jonathan, someone who saw your worth when others didn't? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire me to keep creating content like this. So don't hold back. Share your truth. Because when we share our stories, we remind each other that we're not alone, that we're all fighting our own battles, and that we're all worthy of love, respect, and dignity. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and let's build a community of people who refuse to be small, who refuse to apologize for existing, who know their worth. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are enough. You have always been enough, and you always will be. See you in the next story.